There's a few bucks here that we're chasing around. There's one he's the man. He's the main buck, and everybody's photographing the same buck. And don't get me wrong, he's a beautiful buck, but the challenge is that everybody photographs the same buck. So more and more for me, I've really been trying to separate myself and not get the same shots everybody else is getting. And that's a challenge because the situation this morning, I actually didn't even want to walk out where this buck was. Literally, I was with Terry, and we were literally not wanting to walk out there where he was at. We drove around the area looking for other opportunities, and there was just nothing else to shoot. Because we walked out, there's 4 or 5 other bucks in the area that are, they're not monster bucks or anything, but they're pretty bucks. We went out there, and I just decided, well, I'm not going to go try to photograph the main buck. I'm just going to try to focus on these other bucks and see what I can get. I felt like I was able to get some shots that I was wanting to get, and I was getting stuff that was different than everybody else. For the most part, everybody else was focused on, that direct light and the big buck. For me, it paid off. I was able to get some unique stuff, some backlit stuff, some decent bucks. And it's not for me, it's not all about the biggest buck. Advice from me, it would be don't always focus on the biggest animal. For me, more and more in my style of shooting, I want to focus more on variety, and I want to focus on things that not everybody else is doing. So if I can get a buck that has good character or a buck that's in a unique situation with unique lighting, then that's what I'm going to focus on. I was shooting with my 400. I grabbed it out of the car and decided that's what I wanted to do. Again, my 400's kind of become my go-to lens, and the reason for that is it forces me to shoot a little wider than normal, and I like that. I actually find myself backing up even with the 400 at times because I want to try to get more of the landscape and more of the situation, the environment in the shot. Most of the time, because the light had come out and it was nice and bright, I was shooting f2.8, 1/2500 of a second, 100 ISO. Another pointer, maybe we talked about it before, but in the snow, it can be tricky to expose property. With mirrorless, it's not as big a deal because you kind of see what you get. But if you're shooting a DSLR, again, just remember that exposure compensation, and you're going to want to probably overexpose a little bit because of the snow, maybe a stop and a half or so. On a super bright day, maybe I'm going to stop in 2/3. I can crop a vertical out of horizontal with that R5. That's not a problem at all. I switch back and forth all the time. I'm shooting some verticals, I'm shooting horizontals. I'm composing differently with the same situation. Buck's standing there on the skyline, looking to the right, and I'm trying to put him in the left and the center, low, high. I really just try to mess around with all kinds of compositions. And the more I do that, the more I kind of learn what works best, and then I find myself leaning towards certain compositions. But there's a situation where the buck kind of started getting close to me. I went portrait and started shooting, but I was just getting his head, but I was in portrait mode, so I could make sure I got all of his rack. And as he was walking by, backlit, breathing, breath everywhere. So I don't know how those are going to turn out, but it's something different. It's a different composition that I've never really messed with and tried. And so we'll see. Sometimes all these rules that you're told, don't cut off this, don't cut off that. You got to get all the antlers in, blah blah blah. I've been doing more of just kind of breaking those rules, because to me they're just for general appeal. But if I see an image that looks good with the antler cut off and there's still a story to tell, then maybe that's still a good image, right? I was handheld today. Actually, when I got out of the car, I forgot I left my monopod at the hotel. I was kind of bummed out because that monopod's become my go-to. The conditions the way they were, there was no problem being handheld, right? I mean, 1/2500 of a second's plenty of speed, and I couldn't really shoot less than that because, with the 2.8, I could have cranked my aperture up a little bit, but I still, with that f2.8 and the 400, it works great to give you some of that bokeh and that look, and you still get the critter in full focus.
We got our windows down, driving down the 405.